Today, we will cover what has changed regarding RGAA and who must conform today. The steps to conform to RGAA, the Axe platform RGAA solution with a demo focused on two of the Axe products, the Axe DevTools for Web browser extension and Axe Monitor. And as I noted earlier, we will save time at the end to cover questions, so please go ahead and submit those using the Q&A feature in Zoom. Today, you'll hear from Moise Akbarli, co-founder and CEO of Ipedis, and Kate Spalla, Senior Product Manager at Deque. Matthew Lucan will also support during questions. He's Deque's VP of Global Programs and Regulatory Affairs and supports our European partnerships. I'll hand it over to Moise to get us started. And Moise, you're just unmute.
Thanks, Brooke. Bonjour à tous. Donc, pour commencer, quelques mots sur Ipedis et Deque et pourquoi ce partenariat. Donc, la demande en fait internationale des produits Deque est en croissance. L'accessibilité par rapport au contexte législatif à la fois en France, en Europe et dans le monde évolue. Et donc, aujourd'hui, Deque est le leader aujourd'hui technologique en matière de tests d'accessibilité et a sélectionné les acteurs de référence dans chacun des pays où ils opèrent en matière d'accessibilité. Ipedis devient aujourd'hui le revendeur exclusif des produits DQ en France, dans l'Europe et en Europe francophone. Et nous apportons aujourd'hui une expertise à la fois locale, une expertise également pointue sur le RGA et le marché français. Et on intervient en tant que distributeur et intégrateur des solutions Axe pour avoir des solutions et un accompagnement de proximité avec nos clients. Ensemble, aujourd'hui, nous fournissons en fait une gamme de complète en matière de services d'accessibilité qui couvre à la fois une expertise humaine, des solutions logicielles, de la formation et du conseil stratégique et de l'accompagnement. Donc aujourd'hui, nous allons aborder comment le RGA en fait s'intègre dans la suite Axe et comment cela a un impact sur le marché, en tout cas francophone. Donc ce qui a changé, c'est que depuis 2005 et 2016, avec l'article 47 de la loi pour l'égalité des chances et la loi sur la République numérique, euh, qui ne concernait uniquement que le secteur public et les entreprises qui faisaient plus de 250 millions de chiffre d'affaires. Depuis 2025, avec l'entrée en vigueur de l'EAA, le European Accessibility Act, on étend aujourd'hui les exigences d'accessibilité aux entreprises privées d'une certaine taille et dans certains secteurs à travers l'Union européenne. Dorénavant, toutes les entreprises qui font plus de 2 millions de chiffre d'affaires et plus de 9 personnes salariées dans 5 secteurs clés spécifiques. Pour ces entreprises qui proposent des services numériques en France, l'EA les oblige à se mettre en conformité. Le RGA est l'une des méthodes officielles de test, notamment en France, qui est utilisée. Donc, historiquement, le RGA, donc, je rappelle ce que c'est le RGA, c'est le référentiel général d'amélioration de l'accessibilité, a été obligatoire pour le secteur public et les grandes organisations privées de plus de 250 millions de chiffre d'affaires, avec des obligations de moyens, c'est-à-dire fournir donc des déclarations d'accessibilité à travers des audits, la publication d'un schéma pluriannuel et des bilans annuels. Avec le European Accessibility Act, celui-ci élargit donc considérablement le périmètre dans de nombreuses organisations du secteur privé, notamment le secteur du e-commerce, le secteur de la banque assurance, le secteur des transports de passagers, le secteur des communications électroniques, des médias et des services numériques qui sont désormais directement impactés. Ce changement signifie que l'accessibilité n'est plus optionnelle ni une simple bonne pratique. C'est une exigence réglementaire. On est passé en fait d'une obligation de moyens à une obligation dorénavant de résultats. Les organisations doivent désormais opérationnaliser l'accessibilité. Ça veut dire auditer, remédier et contrôler que, en continu, que les expériences numériques restent accessibles. Le RGA est un outil, il fournit une méthodologie structurée pour prouver la conformité et démontrer également des progrès dans le temps. Donc c'est l'outil de référence aujourd'hui en France, c'est un outil qui reste vivant, c'est un référentiel et qui est amené à mettre à jour, qui est amené à être. Si nous avançons, il s'agit aujourd'hui en fait d'un tournant du marché en matière sur plusieurs industries. Des industries comme le retail, le e-commerce, le secteur de la banque assurance, qui sont majoritairement des entreprises et des industries qui sont les plus exposées avec une pression de plus en plus importante en raison de leur visibilité, de l'impact client et du risque encouru. Les grandes entreprises, par exemple celles qui font plus de 250 millions de chiffre d'affaires, ont une exposition importante et elles sont désormais attendues sur leur capacité à démontrer des progrès en matière d'accessibilité. Les autorités commencent notamment par cibler ces grandes entreprises dans un premier temps, avant d'ensuite adresser des entreprises de moyenne taille. Donc ces organisations font face aujourd'hui à des contrôles réglementaires qui sont beaucoup plus accrus. Nous allons maintenant découvrir comment les solutions RGA au sein de la suite Axe de DQ peuvent répondre aux besoins de ces entreprises. Donc, nous allons rappeler désormais quelles sont les différentes étapes vers la performance et vers la conformité. Donc, dans le cadre du respect du RGA, il y a différentes étapes. L'audit, la remédiation et la surveillance, en tout cas des progrès qui sont faits dans le temps. Pour se conformer au référentiel RGA, les organisations doivent donc réaliser un audit formel en s'appuyant sur la méthodologie donc, du RGA afin de mesurer le niveau de conformité par rapport aux critères. Il y a 13 thématiques et 106 critères au sein du RGA. Ensuite, il va falloir documenter et restituer ces résultats, qui incluent une évaluation et un score. À la fois pour le secteur public et les grandes entreprises, celles-ci doivent donc publier cette déclaration d'accessibilité à l'issue de l'audit et réaliser donc un schéma pluriannuel de mise en accessibilité. L'objectif est également de conserver des preuves opposables des efforts d'accessibilité, en s'assurant que les résultats d'audit et les avancées en matière de remédiation et de correctif peuvent être validés par les régulateurs ou par des auditeurs externes, et pas seulement suivis en interne. Donc il y a différentes étapes pour être en conformité aujourd'hui avec le RGA. Je vois assez souvent, en tout cas depuis plus de 20 ans, j'entends de la part des clients et des organisations deux choses. C'est que, donc, si on peut passer à la slide suivante, euh, entre deux audits, souvent, les organisations naviguent à vue. C'est-à-dire qu'ils ne savent pas où ils se situent en matière d'accessibilité. Que ça soit de la part des chefs de projet digitaux, de toutes les personnes qui sont amenées à commander des audits. Et celles-ci, en fait, naviguent, je dirais, plutôt à vue, et c'est un comble pour l'accessibilité. Mais elle pointe quelque chose d'assez important. Ce n'est pas l'audit qui pose problème en tant que tel, c'est que l'audit reste et restera le socle d'une démarche d'accessibilité sérieuse. Ce qui manque, c'est ce qui se passe entre les audits. Et la réalité aujourd'hui, c'est qu'une démarche d'accessibilité qui est bien menée, c'est d'abord un audit d'experts. Il fixe le diagnostic, il identifie les écarts par rapport au RGA et hiérarchise les différents chantiers. C'est aussi un accompagnement structuré à travers le schéma pluriannuel, la mise en place d'une stratégie avec des plans d'action, la montée en compétence des équipes. Tout cela reste indispensable. Mais une fois que le rapport est remis et que le plan est validé, les équipes se retrouvent face à un défi opérationnel. Comment tenir le cap au quotidien? Comment maintenir dans la durée, en fait, l'accessibilité? Dans des équipes où le turnover peut être important, avec des process qui sont éparses et et au sein d'équipes qui sont disséminées à travers le monde. Donc les sites évoluent, les contenus sont publiés souvent quotidiennement, les fonctionnalités se déploient, et sans outillage, il est difficile aujourd'hui de mesurer une progression au fil de l'eau. Et lorsque le prochain audit arrive, parfois, avec des régressions qu'on aurait aimé détecter plus tôt. Et ce qui est frappant, c'est de regarder comment les équipes techniques gèrent un sujet voisin, la qualité du code notamment. Les développeurs ont des outils intégrés à leur environnement de travail. Par exemple, des outils qui sont capables de relever les erreurs en temps réel, des contrôles automatiques à chaque livraison, avec des tableaux de bord de progression. Mais ces outils ne remplacent pas en fait les revues de code, ni l'expertise des équipes. Ils permettent seulement de tenir la qualité au quotidien entre deux moments d'expertise. C'est cette même logique qu'il faut amener sur l'accessibilité. C'est précisément ce que les solutions Axe vont apporter aujourd'hui, en complément de l'expertise humaine, en complément de la formation qui peuvent être données au quotidien, une visibilité continue du poste du développeur jusqu'à la production. Les concepteurs, les développeurs, les testeurs voient ces erreurs au moment où ils codent, où l'équipe projet mesure la conformité à chaque livraison. Le responsable accessibilité suit la progression sur l'ensemble du portefeuille en temps réel. L'audit d'expert reste le moment de vérité, celui qui valide en fait la conformité RGA, qui statue sur les critères exigeants, un jugement qui est humain et qui produit une déclaration d'accessibilité. Mais entre deux audits, Axe, notamment avec la suite d'outils qui sera présentée aujourd'hui, permet aux équipes de garder le cap, de progresser en toute autonomie de façon mesurable et finalement d'arriver au prochain audit dans de bien meilleures conditions. Et c'est là que les progrès deviennent vraiment durables et s'ancrent dans la durée. Je vous propose désormais de découvrir la solution et je vais passer la main à Kate qui va vous présenter aujourd'hui comment le RGA s'intègre au sein de l'extension navigateur web et au sein de Axe Monitor. Kate, c'est à toi.
Thanks, Moise. With these steps in mind, let's dive into the solution. The Axe platform supports your full path to RGA conformance, whether teams are assessing accessibility, fixing issues, or looking to maintain conformance over time. The Axe platform gives each team what they need to take action with confidence. And Axe Dev Tools for Web allows developers to test for accessibility issues early, directly in the development environment or CI/CD pipeline. And this product identifies issues aligned to RGAA criteria and provides clear guidance so that teams can fix problems before they reach production. You can tailor RGA testing to your workflow by integrating into your CI workflows or by leveraging flexible APIs that can adapt to your unique pipeline to test every build and site with precision. And included as part of Axe Dev Tools for Web, Axe MCP Server helps teams fix issues early and in the flow of development. So it connects RGA-aligned testing with AI-powered guidance so developers can understand issues and apply fixes quickly. Connects to your preferred AI coding agent to deliver recommendations directly in coding environments, helping teams streamline processes and build accessibility expertise over time, not just fix one-off issues. Acts Auditor to test against complete RGA criteria. Automated testing alone isn't enough. And Acts Auditor supports guided manual testing aligned to complete RGA criteria. So this allows teams to validate complex issues, ensure accuracy, and produce the documentation needed for audits, accessibility statements, and compliance reporting. RGA conformance isn't a one-time effort either. It needs to be maintained as your digital properties evolve. Acts Monitor continuously scans your production environments, helping you identify new issues and track progress over time. It gives teams visibility into trends, priorities, and improvements so that accessibility becomes an ongoing, measurable program. With our solution, Deque helps organizations achieve and maintain RGA conformance with the ability to audit, test, remediate, and scale. Customers can assess where they stand with structured RGA audits, and our products give teams complete coverage of RGA criteria made possible with Acts Auditor. So our solution doesn't just find issues, it also guides teams how to fix them so that they can move toward conformance. And finally, with Acts Monitor, teams can track accessibility across all their digital properties and maintain conformance over time. And with that, I will be giving a demo of how RGA is tested in 2 of our products. I'll start with Acts DevTools browser extension. And the Acts extension can be accessed from right-clicking your page and selecting Inspect, or using Command Option I to open the Inspect panel, or on a Mac, or Control Shift I on Windows. And there are different types of tests that you can run in Acts DevTools extension. The purpose of the extension is to get live feedback about your page that's currently in the browser and run an accessibility test in context. So you can scan certain interactions via a user flow. You can click through interactions on the site, select them, and run a test. You can also run a more manual, intelligent guided test, or you can run a full page scan. And I have my settings to scan on RGA criteria. I get instant feedback with 18 issues on the page. I can find here that it was tested with RGA 4. And as I open the issues to understand more about them, I get issue description, the exact location of the issue on the page with the code that's affected, and RGA criteria that this rule adheres to. And I get that detail for every issue on the page that was found, the extension. In Acts Monitor, where you can track multiple sites and their accessibility over time and production via a schedule, I will show via editing a scan. You can create a new scan and set your settings. But just so you don't have to watch me type, I have a site preloaded here for a scan called MBell Home Design. And I can just set the URL. If there are any logins for my website, I can share those in the next setting. Go to the next step. A preset template can be applied to set settings from across your scans. And that template can apply one set of settings to multiple scans. So I can set, maybe I have settings just for my French websites. and I can set the standard there at RGA 4 so that I don't have to individually apply settings to every scan. But for our purposes today, I will show you the setting within the scan. You can select on the next step the standard field, RGA 4, comes right after the Axe Core version. And I can choose whether to test for best practices in addition to the conformance rules required for RGAA. Right, and now I will go back and show what a scan looks like with RGA settings. Oh, I'm sorry. So when from the scan list, which is the homepage of Axe Monitor, I can select the scan name, and I'm brought to a user-friendly interface with an overview of all of the issues that come back on my scan on my website. With RGA testing, I can see that this scan was tested with RGA 4. I do have a breakdown of the total issues, the overall score or health of my site, and a breakdown of issues by severity or impact. So I get a clear understanding of which issues are the most critical. And I can actually go to a direct filter to just look at and review the critical issues. Or I can select under total issues, we have a link to the full issue list. And when I select that total issues link from Scan Overview, I'm brought to an issues page with multiple filters available. I can customize my report to just look at what I need to bring over to my development team. If I want to customize the filters and just give them a shorter list of the issues. But the issues list page will always load with critical issues up top first, since they are the most important. They represent the most important accessibility barriers on the site. So when I expand one of the top issues, images must have alternative text, I can find which pages the issue appears on. There are several issues related to alt text on the homepage of the MBEL site. Under actions, the last column, I can select the issue details where there's a little eye icon. And I can find here that this was tested against RGA 4. This is the issue that came back with image elements that need to have a alternative text or role of none presentation. And I get details here, just like in the Axe extension. I can find the location, source code, and a very specific guidance about how to fix this particular issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. So I will share the slides once again. And so now we have plenty of time to dive into some questions. So thanks to everyone. I see we have a few coming through. I will read out the questions in English so our presenters can jump in, but we are doing our best to translate those live as well. So if you see a question in French, we'll try to get the English translation in there and vice versa. But we will start with this first question here. So we have one that came through. You say the design teams see their accessibility levels, but design is on the design side, which must also ensure compliance with accessibility. Does Axe cover that part? So do we have someone who wants to jump in on that question?
I'll take a stab at that, Brooke.
Thanks,
So I
Matthew.
think what we're implying is that the dev tools demo was talking about they were testing the development code. And so the statement of ensuring that design has come over correctly is more of a flow process, meaning that designers are given the right accessibility requirements to the developer, and the developer is coding based on those wireframes. So this is an excellent time for the teams to ensure before it goes any further that what they have is accessible. Because if the developer, as they're doing their coding real time and testing in near real time, they can push back in with the designer right then and there if they need to. So it's not checking the wireframes per se, but rather the concepts that are coming from design to development.
Et pour compléter ce que dit Mathieu, il y a également un plugin qui existe sur Figma de Axe qui peut être utilisé dans le cadre du design par les concepteurs. Donc, ce qui vient compléter également l'ensemble de la chaîne de valeur côté digital.
Thanks, Luis.
Thank you. So I'll try to go in the order that questions came in. I believe we got this one next. How many criteria and RGAA tests are covered?
There are 106 criteria, and you can achieve complete RGA criteria coverage when Axe Auditor is part of your testing process.
Thank you, Kate. We also got a question about RGAA 4. Does that mean 4.1.2? And Matthew jumped in on the chat there. So thank you, Matthew. Yes, version 4.1.2 of RGAA.
And Brooke, let's add in that one of the things that DQ is very well known for is that we continue to monitor the changes. So as RGAA is considering their next version, we are working very, very closely to ensure that when that new version goes live, it will already be in the tools for you.
Perfect. Thanks, Matthew. And I'm just trying to make sure I cover, let's see here. Okay, so this next question we got, in a large company or institution, is it more appropriate to grant access to these tools to every designer, even those with no prior knowledge, or rather to dedicated digital services teams who would then pedagogically relay the issues and necessary solutions? If anyone would like to take that question.
Yes, I'll take that question, Brooke. Unfortunately, the answer is going to depend on your organization. So, for example, a tool that Kate did not show includes intelligent guided testing, for example. So, depending on your staff, their knowledge, where they are in the process, and utilization of that staff, you might use designers to run tests because QA is really, really busy, for example. And that's exactly how I did it in my program at US Bank. In the Agile release cycle, the designers were preparing for the next release. And so there was some time that could be optimized with their work. And so what we did was I had them test right after the developer before it went to QA using intelligent guided tests so that we could optimize that flow and timing and getting those defects back to the developers so they did not advance. But the question is really going to be about how do you run your organization? Our tools are designed to be used by the right role at the right time in the development cycle. So linters for developers as they're coding, dev tools, which we showed as they're checking their code and qualifying their code to move downstream, Axe Auditor for the QA to test it, Axe Monitor to test in production to make sure, like, say, your compliance team or your product owner is ensuring things are running smoothly. All of these things are going to depend on your situation, the size of your staff, the type of development cycles you run, and we'd be happy to talk to you about your specific use cases, which we'll talk about at the end of the call, how to reach out to us and have a chat about the tools and how they might work for you.
Thank you, Matthew. If we're good with that question, we have two questions here that I wanted to kind of join together. They're kind of asking about comparing WCAG to RGAA, but also comparing EN 301549 to RGAA. So can anyone kind of cover that, I guess, that topic overall?
Sure. Um, EN 301549 is the largest and the broadest of the standards. It includes things that go well beyond WCAG. With the current EN 301549 version 3.1.2, the core basis of it is WCAG 2.1 AA. So right there, we see that if you're testing to WCAG 2.1 only, there's a bunch of things that you're missing if EAA as a regulation applies to you. So now let's turn to RGAA. So what RGAA did is that they went into WCAG many, many years ago, and they interpreted it, and then they wrote an equal, I'm going to put in air quotes, equal set of standards, and that became the RGAA standard. So they are a translation of WCAG to RGAA. So by that assumption that we can see that because RGA was translated from WCAG, they too are not as broad as EN 301549. And then lastly, when you read RGAA, the very, very bottom, it says you can test to EN 301549 as a standard and still be RGA compliant. The reason why we want to talk about standards and reporting separately is because they are separate transactions, meaning you should test for the standard that's appropriate for you. If you're only operating in France, RGAA would be very appropriate for you because that is the regulation and the way it's defined at the moment. But if you're a multinational company and France is just one of the countries you serve, it might make more operational sense for you to have your teams all test for EN 301549 because that is a more homogeneous standard and everybody would be doing it the same way. Then the next step is reporting the conformance of what you found. And that's where the real difference comes because you need to report in France following the RGA requirements of reporting, and that report must be in French, and it must include a plan to conformance, and it must be hung off your digital property in a specific way. So testing to standards is one activity, and then reporting is a separate activity. And keeping those separate in your mind becomes very, very helpful to understand that you can test one digital property, say to EN 301549, test it once with one standard, and then report to the different reporting requirements of different jurisdictions that that website might have to report against.
Thank you, Matthew.
And
We
before we close out, and just as another plug, right? We're happy to have that conversation in more detail offline, um, uh, using your specific examples, right? It is very complex. We understand that. What I just gave you is a very simplistic answer, but we're happy to sit down with you and talk in more detail if you would like that.
Great, thank you. And we do have some more questions that we'll address. And before we do that, Laura reminded us that you can vote for questions. So if you see one that you would like to get answered in today's session, go ahead and give that an upvote. One question here. So, does the RGAA coverage rates we present in the accessibility statement have to be based on an official audit, or can we also use the results of our internal audit? And can this be based on a sample flow, or does it need to cover the entire flow? So, if anyone has thoughts on that question.
I can take it, Brooke.
Okay.
L'audit RGAA est basé sur un échantillon représentatif d'un site internet ou d'une application mobile. Enfin, pardon, d'un site internet principalement. Euh, le, le- L'audit est basé sur 106 critères et les outils vont seulement pouvoir tester une partie des 106 critères. Soyons clairs. Le reste doit être complété par des tests manuels. Donc, la bonne recommandation, c'est de faire appel en fait à une tierce partie indépendante pour faire un audit indépendant. Le, Vous pouvez toujours faire un audit en interne si vous avez les compétences et l'expertise pour le faire, et vous pouvez ainsi euh, euh, publier une déclaration d'accessibilité. Il n'y a pas de contre-indication qui est donnée par les textes de réglementation ou autres, mais ce n'est pas une bonne pratique qui est conseillée.
Maurice, a follow-up question for me. Does the RGA regulation require third party? Does it explicitly state it must be done by a third party? Or is it recommended that it's
Non.
independent?
Yeah. Non, le RGA ne demande pas, enfin, n'exige pas que l'audit doit être fait forcément par une tierce partie. C'est, ce n'est pas écrit en tout cas tel quel.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just trying to find other questions here. I think this question is interesting. So it's asking about how you can make sure that the UI is accessible from the start, from the development phase. They saw that there is an MCP, but is it good how they manage or with cases with a third-party library, would that still work? I believe that's the question. If anyone has thoughts on that.
Brooke, are you reading that from the Q&A or are you reading that from chat?
Oh yeah, so this is from it's an open question in the Q&A. So really the question is how to make sure the UI is accessible from the start. I think some of that was covered with Axe DevTools for Web and Axe MCP Server. And I think we could encourage this person to reach out if they want to go further with kind of Axe MCP Server and Axe DevTools for Web. That would be a good conversation to have.
I think we can. I agree with you, Brooke, that we should encourage Fatima. I think this is who's asking the question to reach out and we can have a conversation, but we can talk about it in general. The question is going to be how is it presented? So DQ tools are working on the rendered version in the browser. So if your third party is also included in that, say, web page, when you run the tools against that entire page, then it's going to pick up any defects related to any of the code. And then if that included third-party code, then you could break those defects out and send them to your third-party vendor and work on just the ones that are related to your code. I think that's the question that they're asking. But again, let's encourage you to reach out, and we're happy to have a conversation to talk in more detail.
Thanks, Matthew. We have another one here. What proportion of RGAA nonconformities can be detected automatically? Do the detected issues include a suggested fix?
Yes, all detected issues do have suggested fixes within the guidance, no matter which tool you are using. And there's no fixed percentage that can be covered with automated testing because many RGA criteria require human review and can't be fully automated. So automated testing is a great starting point. It does help you catch a large portion of issues quickly, but it's only part of the picture. So to achieve full RGA conformance, you need a combination of automated testing with ACT-STEP tools for web or Monitor and structured manual testing with Auditor.
Thank you, Kate. I'm just looking through more questions here.
Brooke, I think we could have Kate talk about false positives.
Okay, perfect. Yes, we did get a question about false positives. So, is there a way to handle false positives in case they come up?
Yes, and DQ does take any reports of false positives seriously, and we address those as soon as they come into us, if they do come through Max Core. And we do have a needs review category that is helpful to make sure you go over those issues so that we so that you don't have those reported. So any potential false positives are separated out and just require that manual human review. So it's just describing.
Thank you, Kate. We have a question here. Let's see. The question is, does a certified developer carry the same weight as an audit in terms of compliance?
Can you repeat the question, Brooke?
So it's does a certified developer carry the same weight as an audit in terms of compliance?
I think we should ask the person who posed the question to define what they mean by a certified developer. You meaning one that has like WAS or CPAC as a credential?
Okay. Yep. And that question was from Thomas. So if you want to maybe add more detail there, we could address that question.
I think we could go to, I think it was Mohammed that had a question about decorative versus informative images and how to identify issues. And I think Kate could talk a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah. Do you want me to read the full question? Or Kate, do you have
Yeah,
some?
thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, perfect. So I'll just read it out. So is your tool able to handle RGAA rules intelligently? For example, can it distinguish between decorative and informative images in order to accurately identify accessibility issues, such as whether an empty alt attribute should be used or whether a meaningful description needs to be added?
Yes, we do have several rules to be able to distinguish between those differences in alt text.
I don't know if we
Oh,
can address.
before we go on, so
Go ahead.
Mohammed, I think in your case, showing signing up for a demo where one of our technologists could show you exactly how that works in the tool might be a great way to show you in real time how that your question is really answered.
Absolutely.
So I encourage you to have a demo of the tool.
This question gets at sort of how we keep everything up to date. So the question itself is, could you please share the list of the new rules that will be added in the new RGAA version plans for the end of the year if we have it, but maybe more generally how we keep our tools up to date.
Uh, the short answer is we don't have it yet. Um, but let's use EN 301549 for example, and we can talk about that in a generic way. So DQ sits on many committees around the world, so W3C and other standards groups. We participate in them, and that also gives us insight into the processes and methodologies and the timings of things. So specifically with EN 301549, we are watching the process as it goes from one stage to the next. And we are or have started our analysis of EN 301549 4.1.1 at this particular time, even though it's not fully final. The reason being is that we can anticipate what might change. So it's worth our invested time to start looking at it, even if we might have some minor changes by the time it goes publish. So we continue to watch those things. So right now we are analyzing what does 4.1.1 of EN look like and are building the rule sets for those things into the master plan and putting them into the product roadmap for the development teams to build them and put them into the tools and have them ready for when EN 4.1.1 does go live, which is anticipated in October 2026. And that core of EN at that time is expected to be WCAG 2.2 AA, which of course we already have all that in the tool. So that's the methodology, and we continue to watch RGA and its movement for its next iteration to make sure that we have all that in the tool when you need it.
Thank you.
Et pour compléter ce que dit Mathieu, effectivement, on travaille de concert avec les équipes produits côté des Q pour que les mises à jour, en tout cas, qui sont à venir sur le RGA soient correctement et le plus rapidement implémentées dans l'outil.
Great. Thanks, Moise. Another kind of two questions that I'd like to address. They're kind of covering the same theme here. So does the tool also analyze whether the content of attached files like PDF or Word is accessible, or is it limited to the website? And then another question that was asking about mobile. So if we can address um, those components of the um, what we address in our tools.
Yes, so mobile right now, RGA covers web at this time, just web. And for PDF testing, Axe Monitor does allow you to systematically scan and find PDFs throughout your scan. You can have both web pages and PDFs, or just web pages and PDFs, and you can customize that setting in Axe Monitor. You can also target just newer PDFs if you wanted. So there are some settings specific to PDF testing in Axe Monitor, and we are the only accessibility tool available that has that level of customization for PDF testing.
And I think we could also build on Kate's comment. We also have a mobile product. But as Kate was saying, RGA does not have automated testing or criteria that can be tested in an automated way specific to mobile. But we can demo mobile and how we test for WCAG and EN if you desire. Brooke, I think we could handle John Hick's question. That's a very easy one.
Okay. Is that the one in the display?
Yeah, it's about the criterion.
I see. Okay. So for this question, in the display, I didn't see the number of the criterion in question, 1-to-1, etc.
Yes, we do show that in DevTools extension.
So John, we're happy to show you through a demo. But yeah, we always include the criterion that it's mapped to as part of the results so that when you take it from our tools and say load it into Jira, you have the specific criteria that failed, links to Deque University to learn more about it. In some cases, we tell you exactly how to fix it. All of that description is in the row of data that we parse out and are able to pass into a Jira ticket. So you can track exactly which criteria we're failing. And the good part of that is if you do some data analysis, you can then see trends, right? How many defects of a certain success criteria. Um, and specifically with the monitor, there is a bubble chart that shows you the volume of success criteria. And then you can use that to educate, say, developers like, hey, we're seeing a lot of name, role, value failures this release. We probably need to go back and educate everybody on what name, role, value is and the roles around it, who needs to do what, and how they test for it. So all that information is included purely for you to be able to map everything back to the criterion.
Thanks, Matthew. And we've been getting so many great questions, so thank you. I think we could get to maybe one or two more here. For this one, is the tool capable of analyzing framework-specific templates and scripts, such as Angular directives, React, JSX, to propose accessibility corrections tailored to the framework's syntax, rather than just standard HTML? I wasn't sure if that was one we could address.
I believe so with scripting capabilities within our XDevTools APIs, but definitely encourage you to reach out for a demo.
Oh, and the other one I wanted to circle back on. So we had the
Thomas's question, you were circling back to that?
exactly. Did you see that? So
Yeah. Okay, so what Thomas is asking is, in his rephrased question, is an audit required even if the developer had training required from legal speaking? Um, I think this is what you're asking, Thomas, but if it's not, please reach out. And again, we're happy to get on a call and talk about it in more detail. But you have a developer that is doing testing. That developer would be testing their code pre-production. Audits are done post-production. So you're looking at the rendered code that the public sees. That's where an audit is done. So you normally traditionally have a QA do that type of work. Now, you could have a developer that understands accessibility really, really well, and they're putting on their QA hat, and they're going to go test in post-production to see that they're meeting all the success criteria. You could do that. It's not no one's saying that you couldn't do that, but the likelihood of that is slim. So thinking about an audit again is done post-production. So are you conforming to all the success criteria? And then you report those results in some kind of format. What we said earlier is that RGAA encourages you to use a third-party auditor, but it's not required. You could do audit work in-house and publish those results. So I think that's what you're asking. But if it's not, please reach out and we're happy to talk about it in more detail.
Yeah, Mathieu, pour compléter aussi, c'est que on a, l- on a l'accessibilité dans les process, dans le code, dans le design, et on a l'exercice de publier une déclaration d'accessibilité pour un besoin légal. Et donc, il nécessite un audit. Ce sont, ce sont deux exercices qui sont certes très liés, mais dont le livrable final n'est pas le même aussi. Donc c'est important que donc un développeur qui est formé, certes, va pouvoir faire tout ce qui est possible à son niveau en matière d'accessibilité, mais s'il y a une obligation parce que l'organisation doit publier une déclaration d'accessibilité, alors un audit en bonne et due forme avec le test des 106 critères qui vont couvrir à la fois des aspects techniques, mais des aspects également éditoriaux et de design doivent être pris en compte. C'est, c'est un exercice différent.
Great. Thank you, Moise, Matthew, and Kate. We are just about at time for today's session. Really just want to thank everyone for attending today and for all of the great questions and engagement. That was a really great conversation. So to close out, you can please get in touch if you'd like to learn more about our RGAA solution, if you have more questions. Um, and so for teams in France or that prefer French language, you can reach out to the team at Ipedis, Moise, and the Ipedis team. And for all other teams, you can directly contact DQ. So with that, thank you all again so much for attending and have a great day.